The bright California sun streamed through the massive glass windows of LAX International Terminal, creating a warm glow across the polished floors. It was just another busy Monday morning, with travelers rushing about their business, dragging suitcases and checking phones for flight updates. Among the crowd, a well-dressed black family made their way through the terminal. The mother, a distinguished neurosurgeon with her hair neatly tied back, guided their younger child while checking something on her phone. Her husband, sporting a crisp navy suit that spoke of quiet confidence rather than flashy wealth, held their older child's hand. Both kids were dressed in comfortable traveling clothes, looking excited about their upcoming journey. The family wasn't trying to draw attention to themselves. They moved with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from frequent travel, pulling their designer luggage without any fuss. The husband occasionally pointed out interesting planes through the window to their children, who pressed their faces against the glass with pure joy, their eyes lighting up at each new discovery. "Look at that one!" the younger child exclaimed, pointing at a massive aircraft taking off. Their father smiled, explaining how planes lift into the air, his words carrying the passion of someone who loved sharing knowledge with his kids. The mother joined in, adding fun facts about different countries they'd visited, turning their wait time into an impromptu learning session. Their older child clutched a thick book about space exploration, a clear sign of their curious nature. Every few steps, they'd share random facts about satellites and astronauts, making their parents beam with pride. The family's warm interaction caught the attention of several nearby travelers who smiled at their genuine enthusiasm. As they approached the premium check-in area, the mother adjusted her designer crossbody bag, a birthday gift from her husband that she cherished not for its brand, but for the thought behind it. Their luggage, while high-end, wasn't flashy. Everything about them spoke of earned success worn with grace. The family had just returned from a medical mission in South America, where the mother had performed life-saving surgeries for children in need. Now they were headed to Dubai, where she would be giving the keynote speech at a prestigious medical conference. Her husband, a successful tech entrepreneur who had developed apps to help underprivileged communities, had arranged his schedule to turn this into a family trip. Their children, raised with strong values, were just as excited about visiting local museums and learning about different cultures as they were about staying in luxury hotels. The family often used their travels as opportunities to teach their kids about different ways of life and the importance of giving back to society. As they waited in line, the parents quizzed their children about Dubai's culture and customs. Their quiet conversation focused on respect and understanding. The younger child proudly remembered to say thank you in Arabic, practicing the pronunciation carefully. Their older sibling added interesting facts about the Burj Khalifa, clearly having done their research. The scene painted a picture of a modern family, successful but grounded, wealthy but humble, and most importantly, focused on raising their children with strong values and curiosity about the world. Little did they know that their peaceful morning was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would test their grace under pressure and teach their children an important life lesson. The family stood patiently in the premium check-in line, their passports and travel documents neatly organized. The mother checked her presentation notes on her tablet one last time, while their father helped the kids count planes taking off, turning even this simple wait time into a fun counting game. They were the picture of family harmony, completely unaware of the drama that was about to unfold. The peaceful morning atmosphere at the premium check-in area was suddenly disturbed by the sharp click of designer heels against the polished floor. A middle-aged woman with highlighted blonde hair, wearing what looked like every designer label at once, strode up to the line with her husband, trailing behind her like a tired shadow. "Honey, look at this," she stage whispered to her husband, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "The premium line is getting so crowded these days." She adjusted her oversized sunglasses, despite being indoors, and shot a pointed glance at the black family standing quietly in line. Her husband, a thin man with graying temples who seemed to want the ground to swallow him whole, mumbled something inaudible and became intensely interested in his phone. The woman wasn't deterred by his lack of enthusiasm. She continued her performance, making sure her Louis Vuitton luggage was prominently displayed while throwing constant disapproving looks at the family. "I remember when this airline knew how to maintain certain standards," she announced to no one in particular, her voice dripping with suggestion. She made a show of checking her first-class tickets, holding them up so everyone could see them as if they were some sort of royal decree. The Black family continued their conversation about Dubai, though the parents exchanged a brief knowing glance. They'd been here before. Their success had often made them targets of such behavior. The children, still excited about their trip, were fortunately too absorbed in their plane-spotting game to notice the woman's rudeness. $250 for premium access, the woman continued, her voice getting louder, and they let just anybody in now. She rustled through her designer handbag, pulling out a compact mirror to check her already immaculate makeup, all while keeping one eye on the family. The father gently squeezed his wife's hand, a silent gesture of support they'd perfected over years of dealing with such situations. The mother continued helping their younger child count planes, her voice steady and warm, refusing to let someone else's prejudice disturb their family moment. A young airline employee behind the counter watched the scene unfold with growing discomfort. She kept glancing between the woman and the family, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. Other travelers in line began shifting uncomfortably, some throwing sympathetic looks at the family and disapproving glances at the loud woman. "I've been flying first class for 20 years, the woman announced, her voice now carrying across the entire check-in area. "My husband and I are platinum members." She paused for effect, clearly expecting this declaration to cause some sort of reaction. When none came, she grew even more dramatic in her gestures. Her husband had now completely disappeared behind his phone, his ears turning red with embarrassment. A few feet away, other travelers had started whispering among themselves, some pulling out their phones, sensing that something was about to unfold. The Black family's older child, still engrossed in their spacebook, looked up briefly and asked their mother a question about the Dubai Space Center. The mother's answer was calm and detailed, a perfect example of grace under pressure. This seemed to irritate the loud woman even more. Their refined behavior was clearly not the reaction she'd been trying to provoke. "Honey," she called out to her husband again, her voice now sharp enough to cut glass. "Perhaps we should speak to management about their entrance policies." She emphasized the last two words while staring directly at the family, her intention impossible to misinterpret. The atmosphere in the premium check-in area had grown thick with tension. Other travelers had stopped their conversations, some watching openly, others pretending to be absorbed in their phones while stealing glances at the unfolding scene. The family maintained their dignity, their parents turning this uncomfortable moment into a lesson about staying calm and focused on what matters: family, education, and respect. The situation at the premium check-in counter took an unexpected turn as the loud woman, apparently unsatisfied with merely making comments, decided to take direct action. She stepped out of her place in line, designer heels clicking against the floor like a countdown to chaos, and marched toward the counter where the Black family was standing. "Excuse me," she announced, her voice sharp enough to make several nearby travelers wince. "I need to speak to a manager right away." She positioned herself right next to the family, practically elbowing her way into their space. Her husband remained rooted to his spot in line, his face now buried so deep in his phone he might have been trying to climb inside it. The young airline employee behind the counter looked up, her professional smile wavering slightly. "Ma'am, I'd be happy to help you, but you'll need to wait in line like everyone else," she said, trying to maintain order. "No, this simply cannot wait," the woman insisted, waving her first-class ticket like a flag. "There are people in the premium line who clearly don't belong here." She shot a pointed look at the family, who continued to maintain their composure. The mother was now showing their younger child pictures of the Dubai Aquarium on her phone, creating a bubble of calm amid the growing storm. Several phones were now recording the scene. A group of teenagers nearby whispered Karen alert to each other, while an elderly couple shook their heads in disapproval at the woman's behavior. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "I've been a platinum member for 2 decades, the woman continued, her voice rising with each word. "And I've never seen such a decline in standards. I mean, look at them." She gestured broadly at the family, who were dressed in clothes that probably cost more than her entire designer outfit, though they wore their success with quiet dignity. The father had now positioned himself slightly in front of his family, not in an aggressive way, but protectively. He kept his expression neutral, but his eyes held a mixture of wariness and determination that suggested he dealt with similar situations before and knew exactly how to handle them. "Ma'am," the airline employee tried again, her voice firmer this time. "Everyone in this line has the appropriate tickets and documentation. I'm going to have to ask you to return to your place in line." She glanced apologetically at the family, clearly embarrassed by the situation. But the woman wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone and began recording, pointing it directly at the family. "I'm documenting this for customer service," she announced. "This is completely unacceptable. These people are clearly in the wrong line. They should be in economy where they belong." The mother quietly turned to her children, who were starting to notice the commotion. "Let's play a game," she suggested, her voice steady and warm. "How many blue suitcases can you count in the terminal?" This simple act of turning an ugly moment into a learning opportunity for her children spoke volumes about her character. Other travelers had begun to intervene. A businessman in a suit stepped forward. "Ma'am, your behavior is inappropriate." A young woman with purple hair pulled her headphones off and loudly announced, "This is not okay." The woman's husband finally looked up from his phone, his face a mask of mortification. The family's older child tugged at their father's sleeve. "Dad, why is that lady so angry?" they asked innocently. The father bent down to their level, speaking softly but clearly enough for others to hear. "Sometimes people jump to wrong conclusions without knowing the full story. The best response is to stay calm and be proud of who we are." The airline employee had picked up her phone, presumably to call for backup. The woman, seeing this, raised her voice even higher. "Go ahead, call security. I demand to see proof that they belong in this line. This is ridiculous." Little did she know, the proof she was demanding was about to arrive in a way that would leave her speechless. The family remained poised and dignified, a stark contrast to her increasingly frantic behavior. The mother quietly checked her watch. Their private jet would be ready soon, though the woman ranting in front of them had no idea what was coming. The father turned calmly to the check-in counter, continuing his conversation with the airline agent as if nothing unusual was happening. "Yes, about our flight arrangements," he said in a clear, measured voice. "Could you please confirm the status of our private jet? We were told it would be ready in about 20 minutes. The loud woman paused mid-rant, her mouth hanging open slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, please," she scoffed, though there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice now. "You expect us to believe that? I've been flying first class for years, and I know exactly who belongs here and who doesn't." Around them, the crowd had grown larger. Several people were openly recording the scene on their phones, while others watched with expressions ranging from disgust at the woman's behavior to curiosity about how this would all play out. The woman's husband had finally emerged from behind his phone and was trying to tug at her sleeve, whispering urgently, "Honey, maybe we should." But she yanked her arm away from him. "No, I will not stand for this. They're obviously lying about the private jet. I mean, look at them." She gestured wildly at the family, who were dressed in understated designer clothes that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. The airline employee, who had been checking something on her computer, looked up with a small smile. "Sir, I can confirm that your Gulfstream is being prepared as we speak. Would you like me to arrange for priority transportation to the private terminal?" The woman's face flickered with doubt for the first time, but she pressed on, her voice slightly less certain. "That has to be a mistake. There's no way." She peered at the computer screen, trying to see the details. The father smiled kindly at the airline employee. "Thank you, that would be wonderful. Our children are excited to see the jet. It's their first time flying to Dubai." He turned to his kids, who were still playing their suitcase counting game. "Hey, remember how I promised you could see the cockpit before we take off?" The pilots said they'd explain how everything works. The older child's eyes lit up. "Really? Like real pilots?" Their enthusiasm was infectious, making several onlookers smile. The mother pulled out her tablet, showing the children pictures of their private jet from their last family trip. A young man in the crowd whispered loudly to his friend, "Dude, I think that's the guy who created that app everyone uses." His friend's eyes widened in recognition. The woman overheard this and faltered slightly, her righteous indignation beginning to crack. The airline employee was now making several calls. Yes, VIP transport for the family. Yes, they're ready to head to the private terminal. The Gulfstream G650. Yes, that's the one. Each word seemed to hit the woman like a physical blow, her face growing increasingly pale. More whispers rippled through the crowd as people began to realize who the family was. Someone mentioned the mother's groundbreaking medical research. Another person talked about the father's tech innovations that had helped millions of people. The woman's husband had now gone from embarrassed to mortified. "We need to go," he muttered, trying to pull her away. "Now." But she seemed frozen in place, watching as a well-dressed airport representative approached the family with a warm smile. The children, still somewhat oblivious to the drama, were chatting excitedly about the upcoming flight. "Can we see the gold buttons in the bathroom again?" the younger one asked, referring to the jet's luxury fixtures. The innocent question caused several onlookers to chuckle. The father checked his watch, a supple, expensive timepiece that probably cost as much as a car. "We should head to the jet soon," he said to his wife. "We promised the kids we'd have lunch in the clouds." He turned to the airline employee with a warm smile. "Thank you for your help with everything." The woman stood there, her designer handbag hanging limply at her side, as the truth of the situation slowly sank in. The family she had been harassing wasn't just flying first class, they owned their own private jet. The realization seemed to hit her like a bucket of cold water, and her face began to turn an interesting shade of red. The atmosphere in the terminal shifted dramatically as a distinguished-looking man in a crisp aviation uniform approached the check-in counter. His badge identified him as a senior representative from the private aviation terminal, and his presence immediately commanded attention. "Good morning," he said warmly to the family. "I apologize for the slight delay with your Gulfstream G650. We wanted to ensure everything was perfect for your flight to Dubai." He smiled at the children. "And I heard we have some future pilots who'd like to see the cockpit." The woman who had been causing the scene stood frozen, her face cycling through various shades of red as the reality of the situation sank in. Her designer handbag slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a thud that seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet terminal. "The pilots asked me to let you know they've uploaded those educational games you requested for the children," the aviation representative continued, speaking to the parents. "And the special meal you ordered for your medical conference presentation has been prepared. We know you like to keep your energy up before speaking at international symposiums." Several onlookers had their phones out, recording what was quickly becoming a viral-worthy moment. The woman's husband had given up trying to pull her away and was now standing with his head in his hands, looking like he wanted to disappear entirely. "I've also taken the liberty of having your favorite tea stocked in the plane's kitchen," the representative added, addressing the mother. "We remember how much you enjoyed it during your last humanitarian mission. The hospital in Dubai is quite excited about your upcoming pediatric surgery demonstration." The children were practically bouncing with excitement. "Can we show the pilots our space books?" the older one asked. They'd promised last time they'd explain more about aviation physics. The woman who had been so vocal about maintaining standards now looked like she might faint. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. A few feet away, someone whispered, "Isn't she that famous surgeon who developed the new life-saving procedure for kids?" "And sir," the representative turned to the father, "the tech setup you requested for your virtual meeting with your app development team has been installed. Though I hope you'll take some time to rest, your recent education initiative has already helped thousands of underprivileged students." The loud woman's designer sunglasses slid down her nose, but she seemed too shocked to adjust them. Around her, the crowd's whispers grew louder as people began to recognize the family from news articles about their philanthropic work and professional achievements. "Your Gulfstream is ready whenever you are," the representative continued smoothly. "We've prepared the private lounge for your comfort, though I know you prefer to keep things simple." He gestured toward the exclusive terminal entrance, where two more uniformed staff members were already waiting. The mother bent down to gather their children's books, including one that fell open to show a personal thank you note from a famous astronaut. The father checked his phone briefly, probably responding to one of the many organizations he helped fund through his tech success. "Should we head up now?" the father asked his family gently. The sooner we get settled, the sooner the kids can start their aviation lesson. He smiled at the private aviation representative. Thank you for always taking such good care of us. We appreciate how you make these flights educational for our children. The woman who had caused the scene seemed to shrink with each passing second. Her earlier confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by the dawning horror of realizing she had just spent the last 20 minutes harassing a family who not only belonged in the premium line, but was so far above it that they didn't even need to use the main terminal. A young girl in the crowd tugged at her mother's sleeve and asked, quite loudly, "Mom, isn't that the doctor who saved my friend's life last year?" The woman flinched at the question, her face now reaching previously undiscovered shades of red. The private aviation representative gestured toward the exclusive exit. "Your car is ready to take you to the jet," he said, then added with a warm smile, "And yes, it's the one with the booster seats for the children. We always remember the little details." As the private aviation representative led the family toward the exclusive terminal, the aftermath of the scene began to unfold in waves across the check-in area. The crowd that had gathered to watch the drama now broke into small groups, all discussing what they'd just witnessed. The story was already spreading through the terminal like wildfire. "Did you see her face?" A college student whispered to her friend, both still recording on their phones. She spent all that time bragging about her first-class ticket to a family that owns a private jet. Her video, hastily uploaded to social media, was already gathering thousands of views. The woman who had caused the scene stood rooted to the spot, her designer sunglasses now completely crooked on her face. Her husband had finally found his voice and was not happy. "I told you," he hissed under his breath, but loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "I told you to stop doing this. Do you realize who they are?" A group of business travelers nearby were shaking their heads. "That's the surgeon who developed that breakthrough procedure," one of them explained to his colleagues. "My nephew was treated using her method. And her husband's educational apps? My kids use them every day." The airline employee who had handled the situation with such professionalism was now receiving praise from other passengers. "You handled that so well," an elderly lady told her. "Such grace under pressure." The employee smiled but kept glancing worriedly at the still frozen woman, concerned she might need medical attention given how red her face had become. Meanwhile, the family's exit through the terminal had turned into something of a triumph walk, though they remained as humble as ever. The children skipped along excitedly, still completely focused on their upcoming cockpit tour, while their parents maintained their dignified composure. "Can we have the special hot chocolate in the private lounge again?" the younger child asked, their voice carrying back to the main terminal. "The one with the little marshmallows shaped like clouds." This innocent question seemed to twist the knife further as several people glanced pointedly at the woman who had insisted they didn't belong. The woman's husband was now gathering their scattered designer luggage, muttering under his breath about the last time and never again, and so embarrassing. His wife remained frozen, staring at the private terminal entrance where the family had disappeared, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Other passengers who had been in line during the incident were now sharing details with newcomers who had missed it. "She kept insisting they were in the wrong line," one man explained, barely containing his laughter. Then boom. "Turns out they're so wealthy they don't even need the regular terminal." A teenager who had captured the whole thing on his phone was already reading comments from his viral post. "People are loving this," he told his parents. Especially the part where the private jet guy listed all their accomplishments. "It's like a real-life lesson about not judging people." The woman finally found her voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. But their clothes, they weren't even showing off." Her husband shot her a look that could have melted steel. "That's what real class looks like," he snapped, louder than he probably intended. "They don't need to show off." Through the large terminal windows, passengers could see a luxury car pulling up to transport the family to their private jet. The children's excited waves to the pilots, who had come to personally greet them, were visible even from a distance. The contrast between their genuine joy and the manufactured superiority of the woman who had harassed them couldn't have been clearer. "I heard they're going to Dubai to help set up a children's hospital," someone in the crowd mentioned. "The mother's giving some big speech at a medical conference too." This information rippled through the gathered observers, adding another layer of shame to the woman's behavior. Security had arrived, though too late for the main event. They now stood awkwardly, trying to disperse the crowd that had gathered. But people were reluctant to leave, still watching the luxury car as it made its way toward the private aviation area, where a gleaming Gulfstream G650 waited on the tarmac. As the luxury car disappeared toward the private aviation terminal, the family settled into their comfortable seats, finally away from the drama that had unfolded. The younger child looked up at their mother with curious eyes. "Mom, why was that lady so angry at us? Did we do something wrong?" The parents exchanged a meaningful look, recognizing this as an important teaching moment. The mother turned to both children, her voice gentle but firm. "No, sweetie, we didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes people make quick judgments about others without knowing their full story. That's why it's so important to be kind to everyone, no matter what they look like." The father added, "Remember how we talked about treating everyone with respect? That includes people who aren't treating us respectfully. That's what real strength looks like." The older child nodded thoughtfully, already typing notes into their tablet for their school project about life lessons. Back in the main terminal, the scene had evolved into something of a social media sensation. The woman's husband had finally managed to drag her away from the check-in counter, but not before dozens of videos had been uploaded to various platforms. Comments were pouring in from around the world. The way they stayed calm and kept teaching their kids during all this, that's real class. Did you see how they never even bragged about their success? Meanwhile, Karen couldn't stop flashing her first-class ticket. Those kids were so well-behaved, focused on learning even during all that drama. The airline employee who had handled the situation was being interviewed by her supervisor. "They're some of our kindest passengers," she explained. "They always thank every staff member by name, and they've set up a scholarship program for employees' children. But they never make a big deal about it." In the private terminal lounge, the children were already immersed in their aviation lesson. The pilots, who had flown the family many times, were explaining how radar works. "Your parents told us you've been studying weather patterns," one pilot said, pulling up some meteorological charts. "Want to help us plan our flight path to Dubai?" The mother was reviewing her presentation for the medical conference while keeping an eye on her children's impromptu science lesson. Her revolutionary surgical technique had already saved thousands of lives, but she was more excited about training other doctors to help even more children. The father was quietly arranging for his latest educational app to be distributed free to underserved communities along their flight path. Meanwhile, social media was exploding with people sharing their own encounters with the family. A nurse from a local hospital wrote about how the mother had spent hours comforting a scared patient's family. A student shared how the father's educational apps had helped him become the first in his family to go to college. Each story painted a picture of wealth worn with humility and used for the greater good. The woman's public meltdown had unintentionally turned into a viral lesson about prejudice and presumption. Her husband was seen in the airport bar making urgent calls to their country club and trying to do damage control. "No, you don't understand," he was overheard saying. "It's all over the internet already." As their private jet prepared for takeoff, the younger child pressed their face against the window, waving at the ground crew. The older one was already deep into plotting their flight path on a digital map, calculating fuel efficiency as part of their science project. The father smiled at his wife. "Should we tell them about the surprise visit to the Space Center in Dubai?" The mother shook her head, smiling. "Let's save that for when we're in the air. Right now, I think everyone's learned enough lessons for one day." She looked thoughtfully out the window at the main terminal, where their morning encounter had turned into an unexpected viral moment about judging books by their covers. The pilots announced they were ready for takeoff. As the massive Gulfstream engines hummed to life, the family settled in for their journey, their morning's experience already transforming into a teaching moment about dignity, grace, and the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of appearances or assumptions. And somewhere in the main terminal, a certain designer handbag remained forgotten under a chair, its owner too flustered to notice its absence in her rush to escape the scene she had created. An airport cleaner would later find it, turn it into Lost and Found, and share his own viral post about karma and designer labels.